Hey, it's on with the show. I am Goose, your host, and today we are going to be talking about about the Diddy trial and some other kind of things that are going on. It didn't really surprise me about the Diddy trial, but I'll get into those details in just a minute. But before we get into it, if you haven't already, go down, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, bang, bang, bang the bell for notifications when new videos are uploaded. Give me a big like on it, so as it does help the algorithm. And let's get into the Diddy, because people have asked, what did you think about the Diddy trial? And to tell you the truth, I haven't really been paying attention to the Diddy trial. I've just been getting like little bits and pieces and stuff here and there about it, because I haven't been following it like other people have been following it. I just haven't, because I knew it was a foregone conclusion. I knew that he was going to be found guilty of something. What he was going to be found guilty of, I don't know. But he was going to be found guilty of something. But as I was getting ready for today's show, I looked up on the headlines, and this one came up from TMZ saying, Diddy trial alternate jury was spot on with Diddy's conviction and about those freak-off videos. This was published today, July 3rd, by the TMZ staff, and the article goes on to say, an alternate juror on Diddy's case has spoken out and says he agrees with the surprising verdict confirmed Wednesday that acquitted the musician of the most serious charges the federal government leveraged against him. The unnamed juror sat down with CNN Thursday, and he says his 350 pages of copious notes led him to agree with the jury that Diddy did not commit any sex trafficking or racketeering crimes, which a lot of people were saying would be hard to prove. Remember, he was only convicted of the two lesser charges of transporting prostitutes for sex. I'll get into that in a little bit. The jurors' reasoning during the riveting and eye-opening trial, the prosecution was not able to prove the RICO and prostitution charges beyond a reasonable doubt, or the sex trafficking charges beyond a reasonable doubt. Even with the prosecution showing Diddy participating in sexual intercourse, the jurors said the activity didn't seem forced and was even pretty tame, mostly showing baby oil being rubbed on those involved in the sex act. Yeah, those 1,000 bottles of baby oil. He further explained the text presented by the defense showed there were levels of consent with Diddy's sexual encounters. He also touched on the very bad 2016 video of Cassie being beaten to a pulp by Diddy multiple times and confirmed it didn't make a difference when considering the charges brought against the disgraced music mogul because he was not charged with domestic violence. Yeah, so it wasn't a big surprise. I even had a thought that maybe they overcharged him on purpose, that they knew they could get him on the prostitution, transportation for prostitution charges, but they wanted to maybe put something else in there. You overcharge him a little bit just so they knew that they could get those lesser charges. By the way, those lesser charges, which he was convicted of 2 of those, carry 10 years in prison each, which means he has a possibility of going to prison for 20 years on just those 2 charges. Which I also found interesting because he was convicted of transportation for prostitution, but he wasn't charged for sex trafficking, which made it kind of like, it made me sit there going, why was he convicted of one and not the other? And I think the reason is because the prosecution wasn't able to prove that the people were forced to go to the places for sexual purposes. In other words, they could prove the prostitution because it was probably done consensually, but they couldn't do it for the sex trafficking because it wasn't done consensually. Either way, they're still his defense team is still vowing to get him out of jail, to make him a free man. He's still in jail. His he's going to be, given his, my brain, October 3rd is when he's going to be told how long he's going to be staying in prison. Until then, he's staying in prison. But to prove the racketeering and the sex trafficking, a lot of people are saying this is going to be hard to prove because he was going to have to prove that the prosecution was going to have to prove that he was doing this as a business enterprise, that that the music stuff was just a front for all of this other stuff that he was doing. And it was no surprise that he would get, at least in my opinion, that he would get prosecuted for the prostitution, because he had one of the things that the video, I think we were trying to do with the video, because there was no way they were going to get him on domestic violence, because I think that the statutes of limitations had gone on that, but I guess they wanted to show how much in control he was of Cassie, that he would like go down the hallway in a towel and drag her back and beat the crap out of her, and which pretty much shows what a douchebag he is. It just does. It pretty much confirmed to a lot of people that Diddy is not a nice guy. He never has been. And as far as I know, he really hasn't been much in the spotlight for several years. I don't know why. I don't know if he just decided, this music thing isn't making me the money I want. I'm going to go into the prostitution. I'm going to be a pimp. Maybe that's what it. I mean, and someone I had heard had said that one of the things about Diddy was that he was so into his sexual proclivities that he had to make them more and more interesting. In other words, he couldn't just have sex with one woman; he had to have sex with two women. Then it became three women. Then it became multiple women. Then let's bring more guys into this. And then I think that's when eventually the baby oil got added into it all. And then he realized he could sell some of this. And that's the thing with Diddy, is he had enough power to where people were saying, "I'm working for Diddy. Oh man, I got a job with Diddy." And then Diddy would ask them to do something that they wouldn't normally do, but hey, I have a job with Diddy. Do I really want to jeopardize that? So they would probably just go along with which brings us to the Weinstein thing. I'll get into that in a minute. But do I think that Diddy's going to get out? Do I think he's going to get off? I have no clue. The way things have been going on in Hollywood lately is that these lawyers are so good and so trained that they can find something to get their client off, even after they've gone to prison for a while. And I do think me personally, I think he's going to spend some time in jail. I think he's going to spend some time in prison. I don't know how long. Again, he hasn't been been given his. Why can't I remember this word? He hasn't been given whether or not how much time he's going to be spending in prison. But I do know he's going to be spending some time there. And I bring up the Weinstein because apparently what I didn't realize is that his retrial has been going on in New York. And I saw this headline from NBC News: Harvey Weinstein trial ends in mistrial on final rape charge after jury foreman refuses to deliberate. Jurors reached a partial verdict Wednesday, finding Weinstein guilty of sexually assaulting one woman and not guilty of assaulting another. Yes, let's get into this really quick. This was done on June 12th of 2025 by Emily Burke and Corky Zamasco. Hopefully I got that right. The retrial of Harvey Weinstein ended abruptly Thursday when the jury foreman refused to join the deliberations on the remaining rape charge against the disgraced movie mogul. New York State Judge Curtis Farber declared a mistrial, and prosecutors vowed to try Weinstein again on the charge the jury had been deadlocked on. The third-degree rape charge that accused Weinstein of sexually assaulting former actor Jessica Mann. The dramatic ending came a day after the jury announced it had unanimously found Weinstein guilty of sexually assaulting one woman and not guilty of assaulting another more than a decade ago. Those verdicts stand. During the 5 days of deliberation, the jury foreman had reported to Farber that the jurors were having a hard time reaching a verdict on that several members had been clashing. Right before the partial verdict was announced Wednesday, the foreman told the court he'd been threatened by another member of the panel who told him, "You know me, you're going to see me outside." When the jury returned Thursday to resume deliberations on the remaining charge, the jury foreman told Farber he was done. "Are you willing to go back in today and continue deliberations?" Farber asked. "Nope, sorry," the foreman replied. At that point, Assistant District Attorney Nicole Blumberg moved for a mistrial and asked that Weinstein be retried on the rape charge again. So what happened was, and this is the crazy part, so they have the Weinstein trial, and I think this kind of got buried because of the Diddy trial, in a way, because, all the different craziness they were talking about with Diddy and the multiple sex and the partners and all this other stuff, and again, the 1,000 bottles of baby oil that keeps getting brought up. And they were able to go in there and they were able to say, yes, he's guilty of this one. No, he's not guilty of this one. We're going to work on this third one. And the third one got so heated that one of the other jurors threatened the foreman with bodily harm to the point where the foreman said, "Screw it, I'm done. I ain't putting up with this." Now, I've been on one jury, and thankfully, it was never a heated thing. We were able to come to a verdict within a couple of days, and I have been tagged to go to jury duty a few times since then. I even got as far as the jury box before they said, "Nope, we'll send you home," which I was like, okay, whatever. I don't mind. Me personally, I don't mind serving on a jury. I'm one of those weird people that are like, yeah, I'll do it. Why not? I was even the foreman of the jury that I was even on. And I can understand if it's going to get heated and you're still trying to figure out, did he really rape this woman or did he not rape this woman? I mean, which comes to the conclusion of the prosecution obviously didn't do a good enough job for them to consider that beyond a reasonable doubt that he raped Jessica Mann. So I think what it basically, it's not a big conclusion that, yeah, it's going to come to a mistrial if the people in the jury room are going to be going to blows at each other. To sit there and say to you, "You're going to meet me outside." I mean, I'd be like, I ain't doing, bye. I don't need this. And it's not a big surprise. And they're going to retry it again. A third time. And this is the thing that I think kind of surprises me, because, again, I haven't been following the Diddy trial because all of these trials are a circus. And I know that's one reason why some people follow them, not me. Because you sit there and you think, okay, well, he's not going to get convicted of this? Why is he not getting convicted of this? We have so much evidence. Why is he not getting convicted of this? Here's the thing. Here's what frustrates me the most, all right? Let me just point this up before I move on. Because I was going to talk about Dan Schneider yesterday as I was doing my other video. And come to find, and I for some reason I didn't get into it. And I remember watching, Quiet on the Set, where Nickelodeon they really wouldn't do anything to Dan because he was making them money. All of his shows were popular and they were making money from Nickelodeon. Why would we want to get rid of our sacred cow? He's making us money. Why would we? It basically had to get so bad to where Dan Schneider was banned on the set and had to be able to watch it in the booth and then send notes down there of what he wanted to have happen. It's already been written. I mean, Jeanette McCurdy wrote in her autobiography, I'm glad my mom died, which is a great book, by the way, if you haven't seen it or read it, if you have not read it. She talks about the creator. So it's not a beyond possibility of who the creator is. It's Dan Schneider. And she talks about how he wanted her to dress more provocatively. There's an instance in there where he had her drink an alcoholic drink when she was a minor. Her thing was like, you really couldn't tell him no, because he held your career in his hands. That's the same thing with Weinstein. Weinstein held the careers of these women in his hand. That's how he had so much power. Let's face it, Harvey Weinstein's not a very handsome dude, all right? He really isn't. He's not a handsome dude at all. And so for him to be able to use his power and to tell these women, yeah, I'd like to talk to you more about this role I have for you. Why don't you come up to my hotel room and we'll talk about it? And they're all excited. Oh my gosh, I'm going to talk to Harvey Weinstein about getting a part in the movie. And then they get up there and he's lying on them. Hey, how about you come over here and give me this massage while we talk about your future? What are they supposed to do? If they say no and slam the door, I mean, they basically just ended any chance of them becoming an actress in Hollywood at all. Right? And so that's what it came down to, was that Weinstein had the power to control all of this. He knew what he was doing. There's one story, and I don't know if it's a true story. I know it's rumored that he tried this trick with Gwyneth Paltrow, and she said no and ran away. And at the time she was dating, I believe it was Brad Pitt. And Pitt saw her upset and asked what's wrong, and she told him what happened. And he goes storming over there and gets in Weinstein's face and says, if you ever do this to her again, I'm going to beat the crap out of you. And Weinstein basically relented. Because at that time, Brad, and I think even now, Brad Pitt could probably kick his ass. But it was an open, all of this stuff was an open secret. Diddy, Weinstein, Schneider. I'm going to talk about Bill Cosby in a minute. All of that was an open secret in Hollywood. Guess what? Hollywood has had this kind of thing for decades. They've had this thing for decades. Some of the most famous people who have, basically have taken advantage of women sexually. It's not. It's not a new thing in Hollywood. You would think Hollywood would step back and be real serious about it, even after the big Me Too movement. And let's be honest, the Me Too movement, I think, has also kind of gotten out of hand. Some of the idea of believe every woman has now gotten to the point where some women, and trust me, if you don't believe me, I think you could, what is it, is it Trevor Bauer? I think it is the former Dodger pitcher who lost millions of dollars because a woman accused him of SA. Only to find out later that he got evidence that said she made it all up. And now she owes him $300,000. Do I think this kind of stuff happens? Yes, I think it happens every day. I think people get into power and believe that they can use it to screw people. And it's a sad thing. It is a sad thing. It's a really sad thing. And for me personally, I wish it would just stop. But no, we're going to hear more and more about these kind of stories later on, years on down the road with somebody else. I wanted to talk about real quickly, about the Bill Cosby thing really quick. Because I saw this. This was an update. Bill Cosby, this is from the New York Times. Bill Cosby release updates. Bill Cosby, actor freed after sexual assault conviction is overturned. First published in June 30th, 2021. Updated May 5th of 2025. Let's go into a little bit of background. Bill Cosby had his conviction for sexual assault overturned by a Pennsylvania appeals court on Wednesday and was freed from prison. A dramatic reversal in a case had represented the first high-profile sexual assault trial to unfold in the aftermath of the Me Too movement. Mr. Cosby had served 3 years of a 3 to 10 year prison sentence. That's what I'm looking for, prison sentence. At a maximum security facility outside Philadelphia when the 7-member Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled that Mr. Cosby, aged 83, let's get that right, Goose, had been denied a fair trial in 2018 after returning home. Mr. Cosby thanked the Pennsylvania Supreme Court for upholding the rule of law. I have always maintained my innocence, he said in a statement on Twitter. Thank you to all my fans, supporters, and friends who stood by me through this ordeal. This will haunt him. I have always maintained my innocence. Okay, well then let's go to the update. A previous agreement with Bruce Castor, Trump's impeachment. A previous agreement with Bruce Castor, Trump's impeachment attorney, is at the heart of Cosby's release. Let's find out why. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court freed the actor Bill Cosby from prison based largely on a past agreement with a former Pennsylvania prosecutor best known for defending President Donald Trump during his February impeachment trial. In a 79-page opinion, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court wrote that a non-prosecution agreement that had been struck with Bruce L. Castor Jr. meant that Bill Cosby should not have been charged in the case for which he was convicted and sentenced in 2018. The court also barred a retrial. That's important, which means he can't be retried. The agreement came about when, in 2005, Mr. Cosby was investigated in the case of Andrea Constand. Remember, she's the one who was who they were getting Cosby for the rape in his criminal trial. And Mr. Castor, a former district attorney of Montgomery County, gave Mr. Cosby his assurance that he would not be charged in the case. Okay, so Mr. Castor testified that while my tongue is all of a sudden going in fits. Mr. Castor testified that while there was insufficient evidence to bring a criminal prosecution, he had given Mr. Cosby the assurance to encourage him to testify in a subsequent civil case brought by Ms. Constand. In that testimony, Mr. Cosby acknowledged giving quaaludes to women who he was pursuing for sex, evidence that played a key part in his trial after Mr. Castor's successors reopened the case and charged Mr. Cosby in December 2015. In the light of these circumstances, the subsequent decision by successors DAs to prosecute Cosby violated Cosby's due process rights, the appeals ruling said, written by Graham Boley. All right, so basically what it's saying, I'm sorry, I'm stumbling over. Let me have a little bit of coffee here in my Hollywood mug here. Sorry for all that. But what it's saying is, after Bill Cosby was given an assurance during a civil case that he wouldn't be prosecuted for anything that he admitted to in the civil case, he would be prosecuted criminally. After that DA left, the new DAs came in, saw this, and went, oh, we got to prosecute him. Now, this was in light of all of the Me Too movement in 2015. In other words, they were going to find whatever they could on some people, and they were going to try to prosecute. And that's the reason why he got let go, was because he already had an agreement set aside that if he testified in this, that he would not be prosecuted criminally for what he said. And then he admits, yeah, I put quaaludes in women's drinks so I could have sex with them. So how in the world can you sit there and say you're innocent when you just admitted you're guilty? I'm sure some of these women is like, they're sitting there talking with Bill Cosby, and they have a drink and they pass out, and the next thing they know, they're sitting next to him with their dress undone. He's over there smoking a cigarette. You know, It is the height of hypocrisy to think that you're so above everything to say that you are innocent when we have it in court records that you're actually guilty of what you're guilty of. If I was advising Bill Cosby, and I'm sure he would just tell me to buzz off, I would tell him, look, dude, just admit what you did. America's a very forgiving country if you admit what you did. But he's not going to do that. I didn't do anything wrong. And herein lies the problem. Again, what I brought up earlier, Cosby, Schneider, Weinstein, Diddy, they all had enough power to where they knew they could get away with whatever it was they were getting away with. At least for a little bit of time. You know, it does come back around eventually. I mean, I'm sure Cat Williams is laughing his ass off after he was ridiculed about all the Diddy parties. And people knew about the Diddy parties. and still, you know, it was an open secret. These freak offs that Diddy was having, they were open secret, and yet people didn't want to admit to it. No. I think, you know, I really wish, and I hope someday that someone in Hollywood decides to stand up and just say enough is enough. Even Corey Feldman has come out in recent years about a child sex ring going on in Hollywood that people thought he was crazy and stupid, and that pretty much, you know, as he likes to, I don't know if he's actually said it, but I mean, Corey Haim was so damaged after all that I mean, you know, and a lot of the truth is starting to come out on all of this stuff. It's kind of hard. I mean, how does the line go? What was once in the dark will be now be shined in the light. A lot of this stuff is coming out. A lot of these people are being disgraced. And I think it's time that, you know, Hollywood kind of got their act together. Do I think it'll happen? I have no clue. I I mean, because of anything, Hollywood itself has a hard time in self-reflection. And who knows? But like I said, I was going back to the Diddy thing. I was not surprised. I paid very little attention to it. I knew he would be prosecuted for something. He'd be sentenced for something. He's getting sentenced for the prostitution across, you know, for transportation for prostitution. That's what they can prove. That's what he's been convicted of. That's what he's being sentenced on the third. To, you know, they said, you know, he can get up to 20 years. What, is he going to get full 20 years? Who knows? But I wouldn't be surprised if his lawyers found some loophole or found something within the trial that says, hey, you have to free my client because this happened. And they'll find some judge that will be sympathetic to it and be, okay, yes, sir, we're sending Diddy free. I would not be surprised. I would not be shocked. All right. I'm done with this show for today. Thank you so much for hanging around and watching on with the show. If you like the video, give me a big thumbs up. It does help me in the algorithm. And lets me know that you like the video and I'm on the right track with some of these things. If you haven't already, go down and subscribe to the channel. Bang the bell for notifications. Bang the bell for notifications. You always know when a new video is uploaded. Share this out to your friends, family, neighbors, and leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about today's show and what you think about all this stuff going on, because I just think it's just all crazy. And who knows what may happen from here, but so far, you know, this is, you know, we'll see how it all works out in the end. This is On With The Show. I am Goose. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you on the other side.